years, we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth. It was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who would trade our freedom for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us. All who oppose them are indicted as warmongers. They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer, not an easy answer.
Liberals came along with the 13th, 14th, and 5th Amendments, which were supposed to solve the race problem. The problem is still here. 9 years ago, 9 more white liberals, so-called, came up with what they call a Supreme Court desegregation decision, and the problem is still here. And then another white man named Kennedy came along running for president and told Negroes what all he was going to do for them if they voted for him, and they voted for him 80%. He's been in office now for 3 years, and the problem is still here. When police dogs were biting black women and black children and black babies in Birmingham, Alabama, that Kennedy talked about what he couldn't do because no federal law had been violated. And as soon as the Negroes exploded and began to protect themselves and got the best of the crackers in Birmingham, then Kennedy sent for the troops. And there was no, he didn't have any new law when he sent for the troops when the Negroes erupted than he had at the time when whites were erupting. So we are within our rights and with justice, with justification, when we express doubt concerning the ability of the white man to solve our...
Viewer discretion is advised. Please beware of graphic pictures and videos. Thank you.
What's up? This is Taylor Eberhart, and this is the Patriot Show. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Patriot Show. This is episode 3. Obviously on the audio, there's going to be 2 parts, but me videoing it now, I now have episode 1 extended. Part 2 will be extended as well, and there will be me videoing that as well. Today, we are going to be doing a little backtrack, a little past timeline stuff. We're going to go over the Kyle Rittenhouse riots, the Democrats again, and everything you need to know about the political party that you just voted for. We're going to learn about Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all those guys. So let's get into it. First things first, let's check up on Mr. Biden. See, a lot of people, now that Trump has lost, a lot of Republicans are saying that everything that Biden has said in the past matters just as much as what Trump has said in the past has mattered as well. And the whole thing about Biden is, in I think 1987, he had to drop out of the race because he was plagiarizing speeches, meaning he was saying them word for word, and that's no good. It's no good. He also said that he went to multiple different colleges of no records of him going there. So basically just a compulsive liar. And a lot of people are like, oh, a lot of people on the right are like, oh, Biden can't say complete sentences. While that is true, a lot of Democrats are accusing people on the right of making fun of him for a disability, saying that he has a stutter. This is not sponsored, by the way. Having a stutter and all that jazz. So the first crazy thing about Biden is Biden opposed segregation. And my source here, sorry, my computer bugging. My My source here is www.businessinsider.com, and you're going to see the pictures of what I'm reading up here. Joe Biden worried in 1977 that certain desegregation policies would cause his children to grow up in a racial jungle. I about said facial. Facial. Wow. Let's see. Former Vice President Joe Biden is facing increased scrutiny over his record of busing and racial issues. Old comments from 1977 resurfaced, quoting Biden as saying that non-orderly racial integration policies would cause his children to grow up in a racial jungle. That's what he said. Unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a racial jungle with tensions having built so high that it's going to explode at some point. This is on segregation. He actually voted against desegregation. He wanted segregation to continue. Let's read a little bit more. It says, down here, it says, Biden's decade-long opposition to federally mandated busing came back into the spotlight during the first round of the Democratic primary debates on June 27th, 2020, when Senator Kamala Harris took a targeted shot at him over this issue. Now, she is not innocent either, and we're going to get into her little past and everything that she did and why we need to oppose these two people. There was a little girl in California who was a part of the second class to integrate her into public schools. I mean, I'm sorry, it's cold in here. I'm shaking. It's cold in here. Where was I? And she was bused to school every day. Harris said that little girl was me, so I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be intellectual debate among Democrats. You're right, it can't, because Democrats are racist. I didn't say it, records do. Records say that Democrats are racist. So for all you women, Democratic women, as I should say, I see a lot of stuff on social media, Twitter mainly. Kamala Harris is going down in history as a woman hero for becoming vice president. Now, I'm going to tell you, she tried running for president at the beginning. She tried, but something killed her presidential career. So, Kamala's crimes against black people, 8 reasons why we should oppose Kamala Harris. Now, this was released August 18th, 2020. And it still stands today. It's still, brought up and everything else. And everybody will see what I'm reading on the screen. I know it took me a second to get to the whole source, but here we go. Reason number one, Kamala Harris was the top cop of California. The police functioned as a tool of imperialism put in place by the white ruling class to protect their economic, social, and political interests as African Americans' expenses. The relationship that the police have with Black Americans is one of the oppressor versus the oppressed. It's their job to oppress, dominate, and imprison and kill us. This is all kind of true. With this understanding, we must recognize that it's contradictory to support Kamala Harris, who has labeled herself as the top cop of California. She functioned as a prosecutor from 1994 to 2011, where she significantly contributed to the 2.3 million people who are jailed or imprisoned in the U.S. There's reason number one. Reason number two, Harris locked up African American parents because their kids missed school. As San Francisco's district attorney, Harris also charged, criminalized, and imprisoned African American parents because their children were truant, meaning they regularly missed school. When she became an attorney general in 2011, she persuaded the state legislature to adopt harsher penalties for truancy. Under the new law, parents of a truant child could be fined $2,500 or more or face 1 year in jail. At her attorney general inauguration, Harris stated, "If you fail in your responsibility to your kids, we are going to work to make sure that you face full force and consequences of the law. Locking parents up, however, feeds the problem of mass incarceration of African Americans and other colonized people. It does not address the root causes of why students may miss out on school in the first place. And a lot of times, you know, kids who miss school, and I know plenty of kids at my former high school, I guess I should say, who weren't able to make it because, one, you know, their parents couldn't take them, or they would miss the bus, and so they would stay home. A lot of the times that's the case. You know, kids miss the bus, parents can't take them to school because they have to be at work, and they'd rather keep their job than lose it from being late. Just my deal. So let's keep reading. Harris's truancy law ignored the effects that colonialism and parasitic capitalism have on Black Americans and other colonized people. It had no regard for the poverty, health issues, and other social issues that we endure, which causes our kids to miss school. Exactly. Family issues, health issues, you know, and people who live in poverty sometimes just don't go to school. And that's anybody in poverty. Anybody. This was purely anti-African law that functioned to put money into the state and send people to jail. Black Americans to jail. Let's keep reading. Number 3, Kamala also locked up African American people for weed. Weed, this stuff. That stuff. Anyways, as a district attorney, over 8,000 people were arrested for marijuana in 7 years. Almost 2,000 of those arrested were imprisoned. During an interview with The Breakfast Club in February 2019, Kamala laughed as she admitted to smoking weed herself while she was in college. Practice what you preach, Kamala. Practice what you preach. Freaking hypocrite. The imprisonment of African Americans for marijuana is even more upsetting when we think of the white companies that are now making millions from selling weed while our brothers and sisters are in jail. This is all quoted by the reporter. So if I say our people, just know what I mean. Harris also imposed reforming the 3 strikes law, which means you get in trouble, you go to jail for, I think, like maybe a month, maybe 180 days, and there's your 1 strike. You get 2, you go back to jail, you serve a little bit longer, 3, life. I think that's how it works. I'm not sure anybody watching this can fact check me on that, but I'm just reading what this reporter said. So, the vice president candidate has repeatedly supported the 3 strikes law, also known as the HOL, which I'm not going to say the H word because I can't pronounce it. Habitable. See, this is what I mean. Anyways, offender law, and imposed reforming it. The 3 strikes law is when an individual is sentenced to life in prison after they are convicted 3 crimes. So that's actually a bad thing. See, it gave me the facts. I didn't even read that far into it, but it gave me the facts on the 3 strikes rule. The law was adopted in California in 1994. By 2001, 50,000 people had been sentenced under the law, and about 12,000 prisoners were facing a minimum of 25 years in prison. Under this law, Black Americans are in prison at a rate 12 times higher than whites. Just proves everything that I have been saying in the last 2 episodes. It's all right here, and I'm going to put it up on the screen so y'all are seeing what I'm reading. African people make up 7% of California's population, but a whopping 30% of California's overall prison population. They also make up 45% of third strikers serving life sentences. So it doesn't even matter if you murder somebody, don't pay a parking ticket, or you jaywalk, or you do vandalism. You get those 3 strikes, you are serving life, no problem. And I'm just reading what this reporter says, so just bear with me. African American, I already read that. This anti-African American law was supported by Kamala. It left many Black families devastated as husbands were separated from wives, fathers separated from their children. This also provided cheap labor to be exploited by the capitalist prison industry, CPI. Which leads us to our next reason. Reason number 5. Kamala also supports prison labor. What's prison labor, you say? Modern day slavery. Modern day slavery. This is the type of stuff that Kamala did as a district attorney and was crippling African Americans in America. Strictly in California, but she was a big part. As California Attorney General Kamala led a team that fought to keep more people in prison so they could fight California wildfires. The prosecutor pushed back against the federal order to expand an early parole program, arguing that it would deplete their stock of prison labor, which paid prisoners $1 an hour or less. So you could either be making $1 an hour or 25 cents an hour. You choose. Through this, Kamala has strengthened the capitalist system at the expense of African Americans as their imprisoned brother and sisters working for a few dollars a day while companies make millions and profit from their labor. I'm just quoting, and it says, I'm just quoting this reporter, and so he's referring to his race, African Americans. Number 6, Kamala supports the death penalty. Sounds like a Republican thing right there. Sounds like a Republican thing. Let's read. Reason number 6. Kamala's support for the death penalty, which executed hundreds of innocent people, especially black Americans, further solidifies her support for the oppressive colonial state. The death penalty itself is a tool for colonial genocide, which is used to control and contain the potential insurgent African population within the United States. So there you go. She supports it. And again, I'm putting these up on the screen so you can see it. Kamala also advocated for innocent African Americans on death row to be executed. Kevin Cooper is such an African American as she pushed for his execution, even though Kevin had DNA evidence that proved he's innocent in a 35-year-old murder case. Give it up, Democrats. Give it up for your oppressive vice president. I'm a libertarian conservative, but we'll dive into Donald Trump in part 2, episode 3, part 2. So, because again, I'm not one-sided. I got to read both sides. It's fair. I can't sit here and criticize Democrats all the time. I have to sit here and criticize the Republicans every once in a while too. Moving on. Harris refused to prosecute police who murdered African Americans. This is California, California. This is, man, it is so cold in here. Damn. Anyways, the uprising of the black working class that followed the police murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and shows that they are fed up with the police killing African Americans. Again, I'm reading this reporter's words. So let's continue. Kamala Harris isn't fed up. However, she has repeatedly refused to prosecute police who murdered black Americans. As California's Attorney General, she refused to intervene in cases involving killings by police. In 2015, she opposed a bill requiring her to investigate police shootings. Her presence at a police brutality protest back in June is laughable when we consider that when she had the power to put killer cops behind bars, she did nothing. I mean, you can't argue with me on this. This is true. This is all facts. This is things that she did from 1994 to 2011, even 2015. Just dropped the fact bomb on you, didn't I? Boom! Anyways, Kamala supported law that forces schools to turn over undocumented students over to ICE, separating them from their families. Now, as much as I'm a guy for regulated immigrants, no illegal immigrants coming in illegally, I know, everyone's going to be like, oh, you don't support illegal immigrants? Way, you suck, you're a racist. But, listen, a lot of these illegal immigrants come over here for a better life. Now, sure, can the illegal immigrants travel further than California? No, because they don't want to. They want to go somewhere close where they can easily get back into Mexico or wherever they're from to go see their families. A lot of illegal immigrants come over here to work for money to send back to their families who are living in poverty over in Mexico. So let's read this. More than 100 immigrant youth in San Francisco were detained or deported because of a 2008 city policy implemented by former mayor and now Governor Gavin Newsom and supported by Kamala Harris, who was the city's district attorney at the time. Though San Francisco is so-called a sanctuary city, the policy required police to notify ICE about undocumented youth arrested for felonies, in some cases for minor crimes. The young people were handed over even before guilt or innocence was proven. Being detained by the police is traumatic enough for adults, yet alone children. In cases where the child was deported, this family separation is devastating for everyone it involved. So you can sit here and say, oh, Trump separated families from each other. So did Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. I'm starting to see a lot of contradicting remarks here. Guys, come on. I mean, if you're going to promise things like good immigration policies and you're going to do better for the Black American community, well, a simple church has found the hypocrisy in all that statement that the vice president, now vice president, has made, and former vice president Joe Biden, now president-elect. But it also stated that this land belongs to indigenous people. The U.S. has no claims to this land and no right to deport people from these illegitimate borders. In fact, the only illegal people in the United States are white people. Now, he kind of went off rail here, but a lot of misinterpretations about America being colonized was we weren't the first ones fighting over the land. Native Americans were, when they moved over here, when they colonized the United States, they didn't colonize, or I said, set up land, set up tribes and stuff like that in the United States. They were also fighting each other for land and colonizing other Native American villages. Native Americans also killed, when doing this, also killed women, men, children, to colonize these villages and take their resources and all this stuff. Just like Genghis Khan, and we'll get into him probably episode 4, part 1 extended. So, I mean, that's all you need to know. It's crazy, and another thing that I see on social media, Twitter, the white people went over to South Africa and kidnapped African Americans to come and be slaves. Fact or false? Simple search. Let's get it. When slave traders were African. Now you might be thinking, Taylor, what do you mean slave traders were African? Well, this August marked 400 years since the first documented enslaved African Americans arrived in the U.S. in 1619. A ship reached the Jamestown settlement in the colony of Virginia, carrying out some 20 and odd Africans who were kidnapped from their villages in the present-day Agnolia. The anniversary coincides with the controversial debate in the U.S. about whether the country owes reparations to the descendants of slaves as compensation for centuries of injustice and inequality. It is a moment for posing questions of historic guilt and responsibility. But Americans' side of the story is not the only one. Africans are now also reckoning with their own complicated legacy in the slave trade. And the infamous Middle Passage often looks different from across the Atlantic. Records show that transatlantic slave trade database directed by historian David Edelis at the Empori University show that the majority of captives brought to the U.S. came from Senegal, Gambia, Congo, and eastern Nigeria. Europeans oversaw the brutal traffic in human cargo, but they had many local collaborators. The organization of the slave trade was structured to have the Europeans stay along the coastlines, relying on African middlemen and merchants to bring slaves to them. Said Tanya Folia, a Nigerian professor of African studies at the University of Texas in Austin, the Europeans couldn't have gone into the interior to get slaves themselves. The anguished debate over slavery in the U.S. is often silent on the role that Africans played. That silence and echoed in many African Americans. Discussion of or acknowledgement of the issue from nursery school. Though university in Nigeria, I was taught about great African cultures and conquerors at times past, but not about how African involvement in the slave trade in the attempt to reclaim some of the dignity that we lost during colonialism. Africans have tended to magnify stories or glorify past of rich traditions and brave achievement, but there are also less discussed chapters of our history. When this professor was growing up, her father spoke glowingly of his great-grandfather, a chief among the Igbo ethnic group, who sold slaves in the 19th century. He was respected by everyone around. Even the white people respected him from the 16th to the 19th century. An estimated 1.4 million Igbo people were transported across the Atlantic as slaves. Some families have chosen to hide similar histories. We speak of it in whispers, said one person, a 44-year-old professor from Tanzania. And it goes on. It goes on. Now, that's just a brutal history lesson. Other African Americans sold other African Americans to white people to bring them over here to the United States as slaves. Now, you might be thinking, like, why would they do that? They got money. That's how they made money. They would sell other Africans to the white people, and white people would bring them over here, treat them like shit, and then here we are now. But what y'all don't understand is people who vote Democrat, I'm sorry, are racist. If we're going to be calling shots at people who support Trump or who support the Republican Party as racist, we should start labeling Democrats as racist as well. And what I mean by that is Democrats are the reason why there is racism in America. You're not even about to say, Taylor, you're just saying that because you don't like Democrats. You don't like the left. You don't like Biden. You don't like Kamala Harris. Now, I'm not saying that at all, actually. I am actually educating you on making political decisions on yourself. Remember, it's we the people. It says it on the hat. We the people. We the people choose our politicians. We do. And then complain about those politicians that we voted in as Americans.
You have just listened to the Patriot Show with Taylor Eberhardt. Hey, everybody, it's me. Make sure you all like this.
Sorry, that was just the audio part of it. But we, as Americans, vote these politicians in, and then one side complains that they're not doing enough, they're not committing change, they're not doing anything. Look, the intro at the beginning of this video, you heard Malcolm X. White liberals are the enemy. Kennedy couldn't help solve the civil rights stuff. He couldn't solve the racism. He couldn't solve the police brutality. He actually brought in the National Guard when Black Americans had enough and erupted. Sent in the National Guard. I mean, obviously there's a repeat of all this stuff now, because if we are doomed to repeat our history if we don't learn from it. Yes, it still exists today, but it is also funded by both parties. It's both instigated by both parties. Now, you might be saying, Taylor, what do you mean by it's instigated by both parties? Well, both parties rely on the African American vote. I went over that in the last few episodes. And just imagine this, hypothetical. Democrats need minority vote. Republicans need minority vote. What if minorities just didn't vote at all? Not for Republicans, not for Democrats, not for Libertarians, not for the middle party. You would see those numbers go low. Low, 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 low. And you might be saying, like, Taylor, like, United States is predominantly white. Well, no, not really. We are actually kind of a diverse country. But why do you think both political parties need the African American vote? Because they are relied on, and then with that being said, they are relied on. They need those votes. But I'm gonna put a video up here explaining it. The inconvenient truth about the Democratic Party.
Most people would probably say the Democrats, but this answer is incorrect. Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery, started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 1960s. In contrast, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case Dred Scott versus Sandford. The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slavery question was, of course, ultimately...
As you saw, guys, the Democrats created Jim Crow laws. Was for slavery. Gosh, I keep burping. Was for slavery. Opposed Reconstruction. Fought against every civil rights movement. They fought against Martin Luther King. The first assassination attempt against Martin Luther King was by Izola Curry. Izola Curry was an African-American woman who attempted to assassinate the civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. She stabbed King with a letter opener at a Harlem book signing on September 20th, 1958 during the Harlem Civil Rights Movement of the late 1950s and early 1960s. King survived Curry's attempt, which he would be later on shot and killed by a white guy. And that white guy's name was, Coretta King, Memphis, Tennessee. And that guy's name was, James Earl Ray is the guy who shot Martin Luther King. Kyle Rittenhouse. What do y'all think of him? Me? Just a kid serving his rights. Abiding by his rights. If you don't know who Kyle Rittenhouse is, Kyle Rittenhouse was accused in Kenosha, Wisconsin for shooting somebody, pleads not guilty to all charges. This was released January 5th, 2021. This was updated 5:08 p.m. Eastern Time. Kyle Rittenhouse, and I read, and this is on npr.org.com, or .org, not .com. God, dude, I can't speak to save my life. Kyle Rittenhouse, a young gunman facing criminal charges in the killing of 2 men and the serious injury of a third this summer in Kenosha, Wisconsin, entered not guilty pleas to all charges during the arraignment on Tuesday. Now, the left are calling him a white supremacist. He was there looking to kill. I'm putting the video right here. Now, you're not going to be able to see it because, or hear it, but I'll give you a rundown when I put that video up. Actually, I'll put it in this one, and I'll turn the audio up so y'all can hear it. Kyle Rittenhouse, now 18, appeared before Kenosha County Circuit Court Commissioner Lauren Keaton by video link from the office of his attorney, Mark Richards. He is free on a $2 million bail, which was paid, by the way, largely provided by donors, Rittenhouse is wearing a light blue shirt and dark tie along with a black facial covering. What does his clothes have to do with the freaking case? Keating asked Rittenhouse if he understood that the previously imposed conditions of bond and bail remained in full force and effect. He responded, yes, sir. The charges facing Rittenhouse include first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree reckless homicide, and attempted in the first-degree intentional reckless homicide. An additional charge, a violation of curfew the night of the shootings, and was added last week at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported Kyle Rittenhouse is accused of shooting 3 men, Anthony Hoover, Joseph Rosenbaum, who were killed, and Gage Grosskreutz, who was seriously wounded during the unrest in the city following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The not guilty pleas by Rittenhouse come as Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers authorized the mobilization of 500 of the state's National Guard troops while officials ready for potentially more unrest in Kenosha. Michael Gravely, the Kenosha County District Attorney, announced Tuesday that no charges will be brought against the white Kenosha police officer who had shot Blake, a African-American man, several times at close range in August because they found a knife in Jacob Blake's vehicle. Conservative groups and sympathizers have sought to paint Kyle Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time of August 25th shootings, as a staunch supporter of the Blue Lives Matter movement and a patriot. So they're calling it, they called him a patriot because he was chased down, hit over the head with something, and then one of the people had a gun and attempted to shoot him, which he has a bullet hole in his arm. So it was self-defense. Now, the only crime that I can really say he committed was crossing state lines with a firearm, which is a federal crime. And he wasn't of age of a firearm. So that's the only crime he committed, really. He was defending himself. He shot 3 people, which one of them was a sex offender. And the other guys, one had a gun, which, picture here. And the other sadly died. Death is always sad. Death is not always fun and matters. No one deserves to die. But when you provoke a guy with an AR-15, you attack him, you throw him to the ground, and you try to attempt to blow his head off with a pistol, chances are your ass is getting shot, and I don't feel bad for you. You chose your decision, you went the way you went. But he is said to have crossed into Wisconsin from Antioch, I don't know how to say this, Illinois, near the Wisconsin-Illinois border where he lives, to join a militiamen who were purported to be in Kenosha to help law enforcement protect property from being destroyed during the August protests. Black Lives Matter supporters and others have sought to characterize Rittenhouse as a white vigilante who brought a semi-automatic weapon to an already destructive demonstration with the intent of stoking more violence. And a pre-trial conference for Rittenhouse is scheduled for March 10th of 2021. Now, see, one side hails him as a hero. One holds him as a white supremacist, white vigilante. But there's no report that he was there to stoke more violence. He was armed, yes, but so was everybody else who was trying to protect property. So you might as well just start charging everybody in Kenosha trying to protect buildings from getting plummeted. But the only crime that I see here is he defended himself. I'm sorry, not the crime. The only crime that he committed was crossing state lines with a semi-automatic weapon. And AR-15. With an AR-15, he crossed... dude, it is so cold in here. But, yeah, no. Kyle Rittenhouse, the only crime he committed was crossing state lines with a AR-15, and that's a federal crime, crossing state lines with a gun, and not being able to have a permit for it, no registration, and not being of age. Moving on. Moving on. Donald Trump. Towards the end, with all these Capitol riots, I kind of was like, okay, not voting for him. Doesn't mean I'm voting Democrat either. But, you know, it gets to a point where you're like, dang, we lost the election and we need to accept it, right? And then the second impeachment trial, Trump is the only president to be impeached twice. They are trying to charge him criminally too, for inciting violence at the Capitol. Now, there's videos of him at the Capitol before, or at the White House before all this, where he said, we will not concede. We will fight because we have been robbed. Now, is that a good claim? Is that a good thing to put into people's minds who are a huge supporter of you? No, because the election wasn't really stolen. No, if there's evidence, it's got to be proven before anybody's mind can be changed. Same thing with the Russia collusion when they try to get Trump out of office as soon as he got in because they thought that Russia interfered with the election of 2016 and Hillary losing. No evidence, no investigation. Or they investigated him with no evidence, and then there's tons of evidence of, you know, Hunter Biden's computer and all this stuff, but no investigation. And so they're saying that he incited it, and they are using words from speech. They used, we will not concede, we will not take this loss, we will not let this happen, as a sign of go raid the Capitol. But also in that speech, he said, I know most of you are marching down to the Capitol this week, today. Go there peacefully and patriotically, but fight like hell, which means let your voices be heard. But since we're jumping into that subject, Johnny Depp was in London during the whole presidency thing, and I quote, he said, when was the last time an actor assassinated a president? Roll video.
The last time an actor assassinated a president.
And as you see, that's the video. He did that. Also, Kathy Griffin held a severed head of Donald Trump. And then she was backlash for it. Oh, I'm sorry. I know it was wrong. Da, da, da. If you knew if it was wrong, you shouldn't have done it in the first place, Kathy. But the thing is Donald Trump incited violence, but other people were inciting violence, such as Snoop Dogg pretending to shoot the president, which is a threat. And he also got investigated by Secret Service for potentially doing all this. And we also have a lady who says, when we say we want to kill whites, we don't really mean it. I mean, we do, but we don't. Roll video.
When we say we want to kill whitey, we don't really mean we want to kill
exactly.
whitey.
So, sure, try to incite him all you can, but look back at what people have said about Trump and threats they made towards Trump. I'm just saying. All right, all for today. Wow, it's gonna be fun doing these video edits because it takes a long time. I had to go and read a ton of articles last night. I had to do a bunch of research this morning to finish up everything so y'all can see what I'm reading, because I told y'all once I started doing the video, I will start putting up things so you know what I'm reading. But I hope y'all enjoyed it. Again, this is not me trying to persuade anybody to come to one side or to go to the other. This is just me simply educating, because apparently a lot of people who think they know politics don't know politics and don't do their own research and form their own opinions. This is episode 3 extended, my first episode up on YouTube after I get done editing and all that stuff. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let it be known, follow my Instagram. It's going to be at the end of the video and everything like that. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I will release a episode 3 part 2 extended and we'll dive further into history as leading up to now in this past election. Thank you guys so much. Remember, we the people, be a patriot. Peace out. Wait, before I forget, today's sponsor. I don't like to put it in the beginning of the videos, but I'm gonna put it at the end. You've ever heard of Anchor? If you haven't, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So download Anchor today and get your money. Appreciate it. Patriot out.